What would you say if a cop smiled, handed back your license, said you're free to go, and then tried to keep you talking for just 10 more seconds? That tiny moment is where a simple stop turns into a search, a charge, or an arrest. If you say the wrong thing, you can hand over rights you didn't even know you had. Before I reveal the exact words, hit subscribe right now so you can find this video again when you actually need it on the side of the road. And tap like, because this one sentence could save you from talking yourself into handcuffs. Here's the reality. A lot of drivers think the danger is over when the officer says, "You're free to go." But that can be the most dangerous moment of the whole stop. That is when the stop can turn from a ticket into what lawyers call a fishing trip. That just means the officer starts looking for anything else. Drugs, guns, cash, probation issues, old warrants, a reason to search your car, a reason to keep you there longer. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn the exact line to use before you walk away, why that line works, how officers try to trick you into staying, and the court cases that back it up. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. The driver relaxes too early. Then the officer asks one more casual question. Then everything changes. Let's talk about the mistake almost everybody makes. The officer says, "You're good. Drive safe." Then you do what most normal people do. You smile, you stay polite, you keep standing there. You answer one more question. "Where are you headed? Mind if I ask something real quick?" You don't have anything illegal in the car, right? That feels harmless? It isn't. Most people have no idea that once the stop is over, the officer may try to turn it into a so-called voluntary talk. Voluntary means the law may treat it like you chose to stay. And if you choose to stay, you can also choose to let them search. That is why this moment matters so much. You don't win by arguing. You win by ending the contact clearly, calmly, and on camera. So when the officer says you're free to go, your first job is to make the ending crystal clear. You do not drift away. You do not stand there smiling. You do not wait for the next question. You look at the officer and say this, "Officer, just to be clear, am I free to leave right now?" Word for word, memorize that line, then stop talking. That sentence sounds small, but it does something huge. It locks the moment in place. If the officer says yes, now there is a clear record that the detention is over. If the officer says no, then you know you are still being held. That matters because different rules apply when you are detained and when you are free. Let me show you exactly why smart drivers say that line. The biggest legal issue in these stops is confusion. Officers often use soft language. They do not always say, "I am detaining you." They say things like, "Hang on a second," or "Mind if I ask you something?" And drivers freeze. They do not know if they can leave, so they stay. Your question cuts through all of that. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, what's up?" Then the officer keeps talking, keeps probing, and the stop quietly turns into an investigation. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, just to be clear, am I free to leave right now?" Then the officer has to either let them go or make it clear they are still being detained. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In United States versus Mendenhall, the basic test was simple. Would a reasonable person feel free to leave? In normal English, if a regular person would feel like they had to stay, then it may still be a seizure. Your question helps expose that line. It forces clarity. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because clear words make clear records. And clear records help later if the stop gets challenged. Now think about the bad outcome if you skip this. The officer says, "You're free to go." You stay. He asks where you're coming from. You answer. He asks if you have anything illegal. You get nervous. He notices. He asks if you mind a quick look. You say, I guess that's fine." That is how people talk themselves into a search, not because they were guilty, because they were polite and unsure. Watch what happens when you use the better line instead. The officer says you're free to go. You calmly ask, "Officer, just to be clear, am I free to leave right now?" If he says yes, the stop is clearly over. If he says no, now he owns that on camera. Either way, you just protected yourself. Have you ever had an officer keep talking after saying you were free to go? Drop a comment below and tell me what happened, because that gray area is where so many drivers get trapped. Now let's go to the second tactic, and this is the line that shuts down the trap question. Once the officer says you're free to go, many drivers think the next question is just small talk. It usually is not. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. The officer may be trying to get your consent. Consent just means permission. And if you give permission, you make the search way easier. So here's exactly what you say. "I do not consent to any searches, and I do not want to answer questions." Say it calm. Say it once. Then stop. This is 100% legal. You are allowed to refuse consent. You are allowed to refuse extra questions. The ACLU gives the same basic advice in plain English. Ask if you are free to go. If you are, go. If they ask to search, say you do not consent. That does not mean the officer will always stop. If police already have a legal reason to search, they may search anyway. But your job is not to help them. Your job is to refuse clearly. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because consent is one of the easiest ways people lose their rights without even noticing. Bad way. Most drivers say, I don't have anything to hide. Then they step aside, the officer searches, and the driver just gave away the easiest defense. Good way. Smart drivers say, I do not consent to any searches, and I do not want to answer questions. Then the officer has to rely on actual legal grounds, not your nervous permission. Let me show you exactly why this matters so much. In Ohio versus Robinette, the Supreme Court said officers do not have to tell you that you are free to go before asking for consent to search. That means the law does not force them to give you some magic warning first. So if you are waiting for the officer to be extra fair and extra clear, you may wait forever. That is why your words matter. You make the line clear yourself. You refuse the search yourself. You refuse the extra questions yourself. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it changes the whole tone. Once you say you do not consent, the easy shortcut is gone. Now I want you to hear this part carefully. Refusing consent is not the same thing as resisting. Do not pull away. Do not argue. Do not reach around. Do not try to close a door on an officer. Keep your hands visible. Stay calm. Use your words only. Say the line once, maybe twice, and let the camera do the rest. If the officer searches anyway, you did the right thing by making your refusal clear. If you ever need a lawyer later, that clear refusal can matter a lot. Watch what happens in the two different versions. In one, the driver keeps chatting and ends up saying yes. In the other, the driver stays calm, refuses consent, and gives the officer nothing extra to work with. The third tactic is the move almost nobody uses, and it is powerful because it ends the fake friendly part of the stop. After the officer says you're free to go, and after you refuse extra questions or a search, you need to actually leave. Listen closely because this is critical. You look at the officer and say, "Since I'm free to leave, I'm leaving now." Then you leave safely. If you are on foot, you walk away calmly. If you are in your car, you get in, buckle up, and drive away when it is safe. That line matters because too many drivers stay planted there. They keep talking because it feels rude to leave. But staying is what creates the opening. Here's the reality. If you remain there and keep chatting, it becomes much easier for the officer to say the rest was a friendly conversation. Friendly conversations are where people volunteer all kinds of things. They admit they smoked yesterday. They mention an old charge. They say they were just being honest about having cash. None of that helps you. Your safest move is a calm exit. Bad way? Most drivers say, "Okay, cool," and then stand there while the officer asks 3 more questions. Then the officer builds suspicion from the driver's own answers. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Since I'm free to leave, I'm leaving now." Then the encounter ends before the fishing starts. This also connects to Rodriguez versus United States. That case said police cannot stretch a traffic stop longer than needed just to investigate other things, unless they have a separate legal reason. In plain English, once the mission of the stop is done, the officer cannot just add time for fun. Your line helps mark the end. It shows you are not agreeing to hang around. It shows you are not volunteering for more delay. This is 100% legal, and it is smart. The officer may not like it. That is not your problem. Your job is not to make the stop feel socially smooth. Your job is to protect your rights and get home. Now, sometimes the officer will try one more soft trick. He says, "Hold on, man. If you've got nothing to hide, why not answer one question?" Or, "Real quick, do you mind if my partner takes a look?" That is where drivers crack. They think leaving now will make them look guilty. That is backwards. You do not have to prove innocence by giving up rights. Innocent people get searched too. Innocent people get arrested too. Innocent people say yes out of fear every day. The smart move is the same. Calm voice, short sentence, no debate. Since I'm free to leave, I'm leaving now. Then go. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it shows you were not volunteering for more contact. Most people already clicked away. If you're still here, you're in the top 10%. Drop a comment saying I'm still here, because the next part ties all of this together, and it may be the most important thing you hear all year. There is one more tactic you need for the moment things get weird. Say the officer told you you're free to go, but then he physically blocks you, tells you to hang on, or starts giving commands again. That is when you switch from leaving language to detention language. You say this: "Am I being detained, and for what reason?" Keep it simple. Keep it calm, no extra words. That line matters because it forces the officer to choose. Either you are free to leave or you are being detained. If you are being detained, there should be a reason. Maybe the officer claims he smelled alcohol. Maybe he says he sees contraband in plain view. Maybe he says he now has reasonable suspicion. Fine. Let him say it. Do not fill the silence for him. Do not explain. Do not guess what he means. Just ask the question and wait. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why are you doing this to me? I didn't do anything." Then they keep talking, get emotional, and give away facts the officer can use. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Am I being detained, and for what reason?" Then the officer has to state his position, and the driver stays in control of his mouth. This lines up with Florida versus Royer. That case matters because the court said consent given during an illegal detention can be tainted. In plain English, if police are holding you when they should not be, your so-called consent may not count the same way. But do not depend on sorting that out later. Protect yourself now. Ask if you are detained. Ask why. If they say yes, then you stop trying to leave physically, and you stop answering questions. If they say no, then you leave. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when the officer tries to blur the line after already saying you were free to go. Now let me tie the law together in plain English. Mendenhall gives you the basic test. Would a normal person feel free to leave? If not, it may still be a seizure. Robinette gives you the warning you need. Police do not have to give you some perfect speech before asking for consent. That is why your words matter so much. Rodriguez gives you the time rule. Officers cannot drag out a stop longer than needed just to go on a fishing trip without a separate legal reason. And Royer tells you something big about pressure. If consent comes during an illegal detention, that consent can be challenged later. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, so the whole game is clarity. Are you free to go or not? Are you consenting or not? Are you leaving or not? That is the legal framework in simple English. Now let's run the real-world version, because this is where you will remember it. You get pulled over for a broken taillight. You hand over your license. You stay polite. The officer comes back and gives you a warning. Then he says, "All right, you're free to go." Wrong way first. You smile and relax. He says, "Hey, before you leave, where are you headed?" You answer. He asks if there is anything illegal in the car. You say no. He asks, "You don't mind if I take a quick look, right?" You laugh nervously and say, "I guess not." 10 minutes later, your car is torn apart on the shoulder. That is how fast it happens. Now the right way. Same stop, same warning, same "you're free to go." You say, "Officer, just to be clear, am I free to leave right now?" He says yes. You say, "I do not consent to any searches, and I do not want to answer questions." Then you say, "Since I'm free to leave, I'm leaving now." If he lets you go, you leave. If he blocks you or restarts the stop, you switch to, "Am I being detained, and for what reason?" That is it. No speech, no attitude, no panic. Just short, clean lines. One version keeps the door open for more probing. The other version closes the door with words the law can understand. And remember this part too. None of this is about being rude. It is about being clear. You can say every one of these lines with respect. You can call the officer sir or ma'am. You can keep your hands where they can see them. You can follow lawful orders. But you do not have to volunteer for extra questioning. You do not have to consent to a search. You do not have to stand there and hope the officer reads your mind. Say the line. Mark the moment. Leave when you can. Next week, I'm dropping the video on what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe right now, because that one gets people searched every single day, and the wrong response makes everything worse fast. So let's lock this in. First, when you hear "you're free to go," do not just nod. Say, "Officer, just to be clear, am I free to leave right now?" Second, if the officer tries to keep talking or asks to search, say, "I do not consent to any searches, and I do not want to answer questions." Third, if you are free, end the contact with, "Since I'm free to leave, I'm leaving now." Fourth, if the officer blocks you or restarts the stop, switch to, "Am I being detained, and for what reason?" That is the whole system. Short, calm, clear, and powerful. Hit subscribe so you catch that next video on the smell of weed trick. Smash that like button if this just saved you from a future search. And drop a comment telling me which line you're going to memorize first. Stay safe out there.